Welcome to hashtag Event Icons, where you get to chat with the icons of the event industry. I am Alex Plaxon, and today I am co-hosting with our friend Lindsay, who can give a little wave.
I'm hiding in a New York City WeWork as we do the Biz Bash. So I left Javits for you guys because it's such a compelling topic today.
Yes, we're very excited because today we're talking about alcohol and safety at events with Michael Stavros, who has been on the show once before. We're excited to have you back. Let's get to it.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of hashtag Event Icons, presented by Endless Events. The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Just go to www.event-icons.com to ask questions. Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share hashtag Event Icons on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is hashtag Event Icons.
Well, thank you for having me back. I'm very excited to be here. I do love talking about alcohol, and yeah, safety's kind of important too. So putting the two together, I'm sure there's some stuff we can get to that'll be fun and educational for everybody, but let's just focus more on the fun side, I guess.
Well, before we get into that, tell us a little about, I know you've been on the show, but for those who haven't met you before, who are you and why are you important on this topic? Why are you smart here and sharing your knowledge?
Well, smart and important, two adjectives that typically escape descriptions of me, so I'm going to do my best to fill that in. I've had the pleasure of being in the events industry for 22 years, which kind of blows my mind, especially since I set out in college with Chinese language and political science. So uniquely qualified for what I do, which is catering and events. Clearly a need for political science in that. But all that being said, I started out like everybody else, just restaurants, bars, not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up, and found my way into a catering company. And now all these years later, I'm a partner in the largest catering company in the Southwest. And we are just finding new ways to keep it interesting, which is why I love this industry so much. And today, coming back on the show, the first time was to talk about what it was to start and build a business. Today, I get to talk about one of the results of that building of the business is what we have to deal with, events and alcohol. But before we even jump into that, having known Will for a few years, Will Curran, it's awesome to me when I get to be on shows and have experiences like this, because I find that everybody else in this industry is just as crazy about it as I am, or as crazy as we all are. And
all of this is true.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you kind of have to be nuts to do what we do.
I agree.
And like I said, I don't want to do anything else. It's just so much fun. There are days where, it drives you nuts like everything else, but because you're nuts, it's okay. And we know that it's going to get better the next one. So with that, though, comes a lot of information that people have. And I think the most important thing we can do as event professionals is share that information as much as possible. There are people out there who are afraid of sharing because they're afraid their competition will hear it and they'll pick up great ideas and steal concepts. And you know what? Don't worry about things like that. Don't worry about what your competition's doing at all. Focus on what your client is doing. If you keep focusing on that, you're not going to have to worry about your competition much longer. So never be afraid to share best practices. Never be afraid to share information, share ideas. This is what makes us all better as an industry. And as event professionals, we all are kind of seeking legitimacy across the country and across the world in this industry, and being recognized as, yeah, guess what? We're legit. We are a real profession. We are a real category of business and industry the world over that plays an important role in the global economic spectrum. It sounds high and mighty, but it's true. We're a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I think is fun because what we do is a lot of fun and is good for business, right? So, thinking about that, one of the things around the legitimacy, I can't use my words. See, you were already much smarter than I am. there's so many more statistics and data and just different trends and things that are coming out, especially around how people consume or choose to even serve alcohol at their events and other parties, but also around safety, the Me Too movement, the way that we talk about the dynamic of power between men and women and the diversity, inclusion, and every other group out there that's not just limited to gender. So what is some of the most recent data saying around safety trends in alcohol that you've been seeing from the events you all work with?
I think the first thing that I've observed, or one of the biggest things that I've observed, is a generational shift. It's being driven by the new range of consumers that are coming up right now and making the purchasing decisions for a lot of our clients. To be honest, I'm so tired of hearing the word millennial, mostly because it's kind of losing all meaning at this point. It's like, what is that range? Because it's ever larger. And the reality is they're human beings too. So let's stop focusing on that and just say people under the age of 30 for right now are these powerful block of, they're formed this powerful block of consumers that are driving a lot of event decisions now. And what we're seeing is less importance in their world of overconsumption of alcohol. And they're more interested in the quality of the product than the quantity of the product. And there's a big interest in the story that the products that they serve tell. Everything is becoming a reflection of who they are as a person and what they value in life. And it's fascinating to me because years ago, it was just make sure the bar doesn't run out of vodka. Now it's what vodka are you serving and is there a story behind it? And can we make some really interesting drinks with it that also tell a story and reflect the meaning and the culture of our people in our event? So that generational shift is, I think, the biggest thing. Second to that is playing an ever more important role, and you touched on it, is the power dynamic, is safety when it comes to interpersonal interactions. And the Me Too movement definitely is a part of that. It's affecting, I think, the decisions that people and more importantly, clients and companies are making about how they handle the people at their events and being more conscientious of other people's consumption overall. But couple that with the almost self-regulating behaviors of people under the age of 30 that we're witnessing, and it's shifting the dynamic of alcohol service altogether.
I think that's interesting that you bring up the story factor, right? Because you hear so much about these younger generations and younger people who are looking for experiences, right? And telling a story is part of that experience, being able to connect. So I think that that's something that a trend we're seeing in the events industry, period. So to see that kind of creep into alcohol consumption, I don't think it's a surprise, but I do think it's something that people have not heard before.
It's something that's building, and there's such a more personal infusion into events now, even corporate events. There has to be a reflection of, if it's a corporate event, the company's culture. And, when it comes to alcohol safety, that's actually a really good place to start. There's always this question of how do we communicate the importance to our attendees that they need to be smart about their consumption, or they need to be responsible and respectful of other people's boundaries at our events. And if that's something that's important to your culture as a company, share that with your team, share that with your employees, share that with your clients, share that with your vendors, whoever's invited to your events. Make sure that your values as a company and as an organization or nonprofit are reflected in the way the event is executed, structured, and presented to all of these people in attendance. I think that will help not change people's behavior, but make them more aware of their behavior. And it's, again, like that evolution of our culture, that the word culture is becoming part of alcohol safety. It's strange to me, but it makes perfect sense.
Is there any pushback from people who are not used to this, who, you hear, just an example, the straw debate right now, where people are like, I've been drinking straws for 50 years of my life, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. Are you seeing that same kind of pushback when it comes to alcohol consumption?
I think the pushback that we're seeing is a fear of liability. And because that liability has expanded, liability used to just be overconsumption causing a health issue or overconsumption causing a driving issue. Those were the two biggest factors. But as liability now has expanded, clients want to make sure that they're doing the right thing to protect themselves and to protect the people at their events, and then even more so to protect the people outside of their event that could be affected by somebody who attended their event. And every state has different laws and guidelines that refer to this. So everybody in the events industry, if your business is contained in one location, great, you can become expert in where you are. But if you're somebody who's in, say, a meeting planner or conference planner who has to travel around the country, like somebody on this panel right now, Lindsay, I'm sure you've had to deal with the changing laws in different states.
And different venues have different benchmarks, right? The convention center is different than the restaurant you're at, that's different than the bar you're at, and just all of those all in one. So it's not even just the state law that's governing it that we find, it's all together, which is baffling to say the least.
No, you're right. I encourage anybody who is traveling and planning events in other markets, or at least unfamiliar parts of their own market. The first thing you want to look up are DRAM laws. And for those who don't know, DRAM law, the word DRAM actually comes from, here's a little nerdy trivia for you, comes out of 18th century England. And these establishments, bars, that sold gin literally by the spoonful. And a spoonful of gin was a dram. Now that could be urban legend. I don't know. It could be a total Wikipedia fake out. I don't know, but that's the story I've always heard. Anyway, but dram
is the dram. How many drams does it take to make a Negroni? But I digress. I'm sorry.
Well, I always just say, how big is your spoon? So,
right.
Because I'll bring a ladle if I have to.
Dram laws.
But so dram laws are laws that govern any establishment that serves alcoholic beverages, and they define the standards for alcohol service within a particular location. So get familiar with your dram laws, quick Google search, whatever state you're in, fine. And once you have a sense of that, then to your point, Lindsay, you do have to look at the establishments that you're hosting your events in, because you're right, they have all different rules. Every municipality can set, in some states, in most states actually, can set their own last call. If they want to have an earlier last call as a private establishment, they can. They just can't go later than the state mandatory last call. But from an event perspective and an event planner and event producer perspective, knowing those laws is good. Partnering up with an organization that is very well informed about these and also has put their employees through training is very, very important. We put our employees through Title IV training. So all of our bartenders, all of our managers go through Title IV, which in other states and even in our own, a lot of people know it as TIPS training, TIPS. Yep. And if you actually just Google search TIPS, that's another program nationwide that within your state, you can find people that can come to your establishment, or that you can bring your people to their classes. You can go through train the trainer programs so that you now have a TIPS trainer or some sort of alcohol law trainer on staff. And then of course, you definitely want to retain the services of a really intelligent, well-versed liquor license attorney or liquor service, liquor liability attorney. If you're the one serving, you better have somebody like that in your back pocket so that you can reach out to them and ask them the questions that you need answers to. But safety is huge.
So thinking about that, because that's just domestic here in the United States too, because you go out into the international market and it's not just the dram laws and everything else. Like, do you have recommendations? Because what is the duty of care for an event prof for an alcoholic if they're doing international events? Do you have any recommendations there, or a place to start from a resource perspective?
Well, you just hit on a very important term, duty of care. So duty of care is basically, how shall I put this? It's the responsibility that a person or an organization has to prevent behaviors or omissions, and that can set up circumstances where somebody could cause harm to somebody else. So that starts with the establishment that's pouring the alcohol. They're responsible for making sure that nobody is overserved, Nobody is, in fact, you want to hear a weird one before we jump international. In the state of Florida, for example, and they're not the only ones who do this. If I have a family member who has a substance abuse problem with alcohol, I can call an establishment and warn them ahead of time that my family member is coming in, give that person's name, description, and they cannot legally serve that person. Or
Wow.
they have to be selective about how they serve that person. So weird little liquor laws that are in there that you don't always know about. I've never heard of it happening at an event, but it is possible that somebody could call in trying to protect somebody that they're, a loved one that they know is going to be at a particular event. That being said, I am not personally well versed with international liquor law because I have yet to do an international event, which would be awesome. That being said, Google the living daylights out of it and figure out what those local resources are in the city and country that you're going to be in. Obviously, there are some countries out there that alcohol is just illegal, period, which that makes it a lot easier. But I would say just do your own research on that one for sure.
And, for those who may be new to this or unfamiliar or just looking to make sure they're asking the right questions, what are the questions they should be asking?
So questions include, but are not limited to, what types of alcohol can be served?
Okay.
Are there rules concerning certain types of alcohol being served at the same time? For example, there could be a rule against having beer and wine and spirits. Maybe you can only have spirits. Maybe you can have spirits and wine, but not beer. So what you're able to serve is a big question. Number two, where can you get the actual product from? What are the legal ways of distributing alcohol? Do you have to have a liquor license to actually get the alcohol? Do you need something like in the United States and in a lot of municipalities, a special event liquor license if it's a non-licensed premises? If it is a licensed premises, do you have to go through that particular establishment? Are you allowed to let that establishment turn off their service for the night so that you can bring in something else, another supplier perhaps? Then you want to talk about individual service timeframes. When are we allowed to serve? Is there a particular start time? In certain places, you can't serve alcohol, say on a Sunday before noon. And what time am I allowed to serve until? And what are the rules surrounding over service? How, what is the local law standard, the local legal standard for over service of an individual in another market? And then liability always comes back to us. Who is liable should something go wrong?
Yeah.
The person or organization serving alcohol, of course, is going to be somewhere in that liability chain. But you as the host client have a liability. So you want to make sure that you have all the proper insurance, liquor liability insurance, general liability insurance. If so, you want to make sure that the organizations or individuals that you're hiring to serve your alcohol have all of that. And if possible, can list you, your organization, and any other people connected to the event or organizations connected to the event that you deem necessary as additional insureds. That way their coverage protects you. Conversely, you may be asked to do that with the venue. A lot of times venues require a client to get their own certificate of insurance that would cover the venue as well as the alcohol service at the venue. So these are just some of the questions to ask. Really, it's logical if you think about it. What questions do I need to ask that relate to the safety of the people attending my event? Right. What questions do I need to ask to protect my financial well-being should something go sideways on us? As long as you're thinking along those lines, you're going to end up asking the right questions. And as you're talking with somebody, like any conversation where you start asking questions, their answers will help you frame the next set of questions you want to ask. Biggest thing of all, and I tell this in just about any situation you're in, never be afraid to ask a dumb question.
Yeah.
Because the answer that you never get could make your life a lot worse and more embarrassing than asking a dumb question.
I agree. Kind of thinking about that, it's interesting as an event professional, it is not uncommon because we talk a lot about what is the responsibility and liability when I'm serving alcohol or one of my clients is serving alcohol at an event. But there's still a lot of gray area around I am the event planner and I have attendees in the hotel bar because we are the only group in the house. And it becomes my job to answer the back call when, you know, they need someone to come and help a drunk attendee to go out, and like the bartender will have cut them off, but like coming in, one of the events I work with, their practice is actually to designate one senior manager to kind of monitor that consumption of alcohol. So they go to the happy hour, they come in and they intervene if things get out of hand. And that's really helpful from a leadership perspective, because it really does say we are walking our talk when we're thinking about it. Is that something you see frequently at other events? Because it's really, it's unique in with some of our clients in the industries we work in, because they're very industrial or financial or banking. It's almost seen as a weakness if everybody's not participating inside the happy hour or doing that, or offensive.
I think there's less of a stigma than there used to be about, you know, as you said, not participating or, you know, being the holdout on the side. And yeah, there are a lot of companies now that are designated one, and in some cases, multiple senior leaders to kind of be the monitor, so to speak. You know, think of them as plainclothes police officers all throughout the party. They're just making sure everybody is having a good time and that nobody's going overboard, because they are there not just to protect the employees and the guests, they're there to protect the company as well. You know, when you brought up the great example of, say, at the hotel bar. Liability is a tricky thing, because if they're at the bar and it's not a conference sponsored or private company sponsored event, you would think automatically, oh, I'm not liable for that at all.
No, you are.
But you are, in a sense, not directly in a lot of cases, because if they came from an event that you just hosted and now they have tipped into the point of intoxication, well, when did that intoxication occur? Was that during the event? Was that at the hotel bar? You know, there could be mitigating circumstances. Did they go up to the hotel room and sleep for an hour before they came back down? That changes the liability from the event more so to, say, the bar. But it's not a guarantee. Again, every state is different and every lawyer is different. How they argue it can affect the outcome of that case. So things like monitoring that, having those senior leaders are a great idea, but they're only a great idea if you have a fully formed plan going into it, which means you have met as a small group and explained what the designated person is supposed to do just in monitoring everything. Then what are they supposed to do if there's an issue? How do they handle it? There has to be some level of training. And I'm not talking bringing in a professional to train you. I'm thinking, again, logically, what if there's an employee or a guest at an event that is indulging too much? How are you going to handle that? So make sure that the discussion isn't just the assignment, but the actual responsibilities that this person will have. And then, like anything else, make sure that this person has the full faith and support of even more senior leaders in the company. It's kind of like a bartender at an event. If a bartender feels uncomfortable serving somebody, if they feel like, you know what, this person is starting to head toward being overserved, you know, I'm going to cut them off. In our company, for example, we 100% back the bartender. If that bartender says, I am no longer comfortable serving that person will no longer be served at the event. We will find our client contact. We will explain what's going on. If possible, we'll even snap a quick photo with a phone of the person that we're talking about, show that to the person, to the senior leader in charge or to our client, and they can deal with it with our support from there. Well, it's no different if you are a senior leader trying to do that for your own company. Your company has to back you up. And I would bet dollars to donuts any HR department is going to back them up. But again, lay out the expectation, lay out the course of action.
Do you see a more difficulty in identifying overconsumption at an event because, for example, there may be multiple bars at a reception that are across the room from each other and you don't know how many drinks the person has had?
So many variables in that. But yes, it can be challenging. I'll say the hardest thing is other people at the event getting them drinks. That's always the number one thing that we can't ever control. We do our best, but what we're finding is clever ways that our clients are helping us overcome that. So I remember at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about culture and really helping your team celebrate the culture of the organization, which bleeds out into the guests that attend and into the VIPs and the dignitaries that are attending. You know, it's kind of reflected in, we all are in this together and we're a reflection of one another. So that culture piece is huge, but then it gets more into just as much the liability as much as the impression, and that would be, well, let's limit the number of drinks that they can have. So that's easily done by drink tickets, by RFID wristbands, and you want to get Big Brother next level on the RFID wristbands, you can assign them to the individuals when they register or come into the event. Now you can track every drink that this person has had. While I'm not a fan of Big Brother, I am a fan of protecting everybody. So now if you're a guest at the party and you know that every drink you have is being recorded somewhere because it's hosted bar, you're probably not thinking of it in terms of, oh, this could be used against me, but more about, oh, well, if I know they're watching, maybe I should take it easy a little bit. But it helps in so many ways, like from a business perspective, for me, it helps me know where people are drinking, which bars are getting hit the most. It tells me which, are spirits selling more than wine and beer. So certain things will help me and my team understand, with live data, where do we need to shift resources? Like an example of, well, somebody goes to one bar, they're getting cut off, they go to another. If it's an RFID or some other redemption situation, we can remove the redemption ability from them. So now they can't get their own drinks. But again, you do run into situations where people buying drinks for other people can't really do a lot to stop that other than just be vigilant and monitor. And if we deem that somebody needs to leave, which technically if in certain markets, in certain municipalities, if the establishment deems that this person has been overserved or is going to be overserved, you might have a time limit of getting that person out of the event. You might, in a lot of municipalities, you have 30 minutes from the time that that person is cut off. You need to do everything in your power as the establishment to get that person safely out of your establishment and ideally to a safe spot like a home. You have to demonstrate that you've called a cab for this person or that you've tried to reach somebody to come and get them, somebody that they know with their permission, and get them off of the licensed establishment within 30 minutes. So that's another way around that problem of somebody finding a way to get another drink somewhere else. All of these things kind of roll together. And again, it comes down to that training so that your team knows what their responsibilities are, what our rights are as the liquor service company, and where our responsibility ends and the client's responsibility begins. It's all about protecting everybody.
You've talked a lot about responsibility though. And like the RFID, there's some Big Brother there. At the same time, it's a great way because you are introducing probably new tech or just a different way because so many of us have done drink targets or just thinking about it. It helps pull the attendees into the culture of safety surrounding these experiences that have alcohol and those other things. And I think, what we struggle with some of our clients is helping them write the communication guidelines because they can be very dry and boring. Thou shalt not, right? The expectations of this, and like no one reads them. It's like, if this happens in case of emergency, don't do it. And you skirt over it, but you don't always do that. And so I like it because as you're coming in and you're scanning it, don't forget our expectation is kind of here. Help us, if you see something, say something. It's kind of like the airport. We take care of one another. And so that's a great aha moment for me in communicating the safety guidelines and responsibility around our actions, not even just alcohol consumption, but our actions as attendees when we're at events, because it helps us protect the event that we care a lot about, have invested time and money in, and can make both the companies we represent and the companies we're working with. So that's a really neat idea that makes it less stalkerish that Big Brother's watching.
A little stalking isn't so bad.
Are there any limiting alcohol consumption tactics that you find are not effective, like they may have once been? That maybe we should stop doing?
The holding button you opened up here, Alex.
I'll tell you one thing that is a bad idea. And actually, this came from one of our event managers. He and I were talking about this, and I hadn't even thought about this. Announcing last call at an event. Bad idea. Because what happens when you call last call anywhere?
Everyone
Mad rush for the bar.
Yeah.
As he said, it clears the dance floor, it kills the energy of the party, and now I have a line of 40 people at every bar. I legit had not even thought of it that way. And he said, just don't do it. Just do a hard close at a set time. And whoever's left in line, sorry, you're left in line. Tactics that don't work is being nice. Doesn't work a lot. If at a certain point in the event, you've exhausted the niceness that you can go through, and sometimes you just have to have a firm hand, and really, with the backing of your client, with the backing of the organization that's sponsoring the event, know that there could be a need for security involved. And security personnel at an event is important. I prefer plain clothes and that they're mingling through the event, but we're also respectful of our clients' wishes. Some clients actually of ours prefer uniformed police officers. They want their presence felt. They want their guests to know, yes, they're here for your safety, but they're also here for the safety of the people around you in case you decide to do something less than responsible. So, as far as tactics, it's doing anything you can to mitigate human nature. Because that's what I found at least. But we're also seeing a tactic like alcohol-free events. There's been an interesting rise in it. And again, it goes to that generational shift. There's an emphasis on creativity, on flavor, and on health. And we're seeing now an alcohol-free happy hour reception. Not many of them yet, but it's happening. There actually was a company here in Phoenix that was doing pop-up alcohol-free bars and experiences. They launched one in August. I'm like, oh my God, August in Phoenix, what are you thinking? But people loved it. And we're seeing more and more of it. And for us, it's now, how do we bring that to market for our clients? And we're having to find new products. Like there's this great product out there called Seedlip, and it's non-alcoholic distilled spirits. It's out of the UK, and it's this guy who created the company there, and he had this land to grow botanicals and herbs and everything, and he figured out a way to distill alcohol that no longer has any proof to it. It's 0 proof alcohol, but it's a great substitute for vodka or gin. And you can mix these unbelievable cocktails with it, or mocktails, excuse me, that actually taste like spirituous beverages and aren't as loaded with sugar and that heavy flavor. I mean, if you've had a lot of mocktails, to get a really good flavor out of them, you typically have to load them up with sugary ingredients. This whole non-alcoholic spirit thing gives us a way around that, so we can create more interesting drinks. And because it's clear, you can mix it with whatever you want, and it'll take on great colors, and you can play around with it. Gin and tonic, but what a great way to incorporate non-alcoholic beverages into an alcohol and fueled environment. If you're making interesting drinks that don't have alcohol, people will try them. And if they like it, they might have another. That's 2 more non-alcoholic drinks than they would have had alcohol drinks. So it's another, kind of trick that you can use to get people to drink a little bit less alcohol.
And I feel like I'm going to open up Pandora's box here, and we don't have to go on this tangent, but I do want to acknowledge an interesting trend with this growing trend of mocktails and kind of people drinking less alcohol at events. We're having that conversation at the same time that we're having a conversation about the growing trend of introducing marijuana into events. So I find that juxtaposition extremely interesting. And I don't know if there's a connection there, but I do find it fascinating.
I personally don't have a lot of experience with those kinds of events because it's not legal in Arizona yet. And when we've traveled out of state with our clients, they have not wanted that to be part of their events. So I wish I could speak more authoritatively to it, but in my understanding of it so far, I'm a little hesitant to mix the two. What I think could be an interesting segue or kind of move into it would be maybe the CBD thing, and maybe not having cannabis specific products or cannabis itself, but the CBD products as additives to certain beverages, which brings in the health benefit and minimizes to my knowledge, the exposure to yet another intoxicant. I do know of some events and clients and colleagues of mine who are doing events in Colorado, doing events in California, where they are introducing marijuana based products into the event. And I mean, truly, I don't even know how you do that. Because it's, to me, it would feel like it should be one or the other. But again, because I don't know enough about it yet, I can't say how to mix the two. It's interesting because we're all headed in that direction. So I kind of get it on the stick now that I think about it. I got to start looking into this stuff because it's coming in Arizona at some point. I don't know if it's 2020 or beyond, but
that's the other side of the spectrum too, because we're seeing this growing trend of mocktails, and yet we're having a conversation about bringing in other intoxicants. But do you ever think we'll see where we won't have alcohol at events? Because there's certain events where, because of the culture of the company or something like that, there's just no alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. But do you ever think it will just go away? Like, it's no longer an expectation that at a happy hour there will be an open bar?
You know, they say never, so I'm never going to say never about this, but it could. I mean, I don't foresee it. I think people still want their drinks. I still think alcohol is a part of our social culture, and it's part of the business culture. Yeah. You know, I call it whatever you want. Call alcohol the social lubricant. It's what loosens everybody up a little bit so that they feel more comfortable talking. So I think if we eliminated alcohol altogether from corporate events and say conference style events, there's going to be a whole lot of wallflowers that retreat right back to the wall because they're not going to have the liquid, that liquid courage to start talking to other people. And I'm not talking about getting smashed. I'm not talking about getting smashed. Sorry guys, these are new headphones and I'm really not enjoying them. But I'm talking about responsibly doing it. So do I see it as a standard? No. As the norm? No. I do see more and more opportunity though to have alcohol-free events because that's what the attendees are enjoying. Mm-hmm. And they're probably going to be smaller in scale. Do I see a 6,000 person conference event having it? No. Do I see a festival being alcohol-free? Well, only if that's part of the culture of the festival. If it's not, then people are going to want to drink. What's interesting though is this change in attitude toward alcohol that I started talking about at the beginning, that it's less important. When I was in my 20s, my social life revolved around the bars. We would go out all the time. And when we went to events, when we went to concerts and festivals, it was always, where's my next drink? And it just was part of my experience and my friends and our little community's culture. That's changing. And it's a self-regulating thing now. I guess there are people out there that are just more interested than getting a buzz on. So
I do find that interesting because I was just in Phoenix earlier this year, and 2 nights, rather than going to a bar, we went out for boba, and the place was hopping at like 9:00 at night. And there were a ton of young people in there, and they had Instagrammable walls and all sorts of stuff. And it was like going to the bar, but it had lights on and non-alcoholic, fruity, delicious drinks. So
it had lights on. I love that. That's one of your qualifiers. It had the lights on.
My Gen X over here is like, what is this place you speak of? I'm thinking of this week at the 5 events I've been attending. Like, there's a happy hour starting at noon. Somebody was like, do you want Prosecco on tap today at the 12 o'clock lunch we had? And I was like, I don't know. I think we're good here.
But I do think it's something that, we talk about the culture, right? Well, how do you communicate to attendees what the culture is? How do you talk about those safety guidelines and the responsibility around alcohol consumption? How do you get their buy-in to that culture?
It's not easy. If you're talking, let's hold social events off to the side for now, private social events, because I don't really know how to educate people at a private social event other than the host and hostess or the group of people that are throwing the event, setting the tone, so to speak. But from corporate events, from conference and meeting and convention events, I think that has to occur. You can't really just send out an email. You can't really have something on your app that tells you all about, responsible drinking. I think more than anything, it's done through example. And whether it's the cultural example or that thing of having senior leaders or having security or plants that are kind of going around and kind of just keeping their eye on things. I wish I had a better answer for you in terms of communicating that, other than just saying right out of the gate, enjoy yourself responsibly. I mean, I
Make
think
a
if
funny
people,
video out of it.
that's actually well, now I'm sitting there thinking
Well,
about
maybe
what the
it's
content of that
playful.
video would be.
Well, no, but I mean, if you think about it, it's contact. Like, I remember at PCMA a few years ago, the CEO made, like, because it was flu season and it was taking everybody down. And it's always, convening leaders is always in January. We were in Chicago. It was bitterly cold. And she had on this huge, ridiculous parka. And she was like, this is the proper way to greet another event professional, though we're huggers in flu season. And she would be like, shoulder bump. And this is the proper way to cough. Right. And like all of these things. And there's ways to talk about alcohol consumption that I think don't necessarily expose the, I mean, it talks about the ridiculous, because you do look ridiculous when you overconsume. Like, don't be that guy, right? Don't be that girl at the party. No, because nobody goes out, I think, setting out, or rarely do we go out to set to be that person at a business event to be that person. But it happens. And so, like, having that video series reminder or something else, like when it plays on the app or something, is just a nice reminder of your face will go here in next year's video.
It's right as you said it, my thought was, how do we have a disclaimer? How do we have, like every time you download an app, you have to check the box, I agree to the terms and conditions. How do we do that where the term and condition is, yeah, if we deem you to be having a little too much fun this year, you're making the highlight reel for next year.
Yeah, because I mean, that
social
policing, public shaming still works. You don't have to do it in a mean way, but like there's an underscore about the behavior without being the morality police.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I assume that whatever that looks like is part of a duty of care policy within your organization, right? So how do you get the buy-in? How do you approach that conversation with leadership about a duty of care policy? Is that a different conversation if you're a third party or an agency event prof versus a venue professional versus being the in-house planner? Like, what does that conversation look like?
Well, in a professional setting, like a corporate or convention or conference setting, the easiest way to get everybody's attention is to start the conversation with liability. And that gets everybody's attention right out of the gate. And once they kind of have all their attention focused on you, now you start to talk about, all right, so what are the policies? What are the procedures? Who is in charge? Who are we designating to be responsible for each element of this event? Whether it's the alcohol service, whether it's the rentals, the linen, the audiovisual, transportation, everybody has to be designated. And if you have somebody or a group of people that can be in charge of this particular element, the liability related to, say, alcohol service, you'll find that they're very quick to communicate with all the appropriate parties. And the earlier you do it, the better. And we're talking about everything from service standards to timing to how to handle security, how to handle issues if security needs to step in, and what is the post-event activity, what is the post-event follow-up that will occur as a result of anything that goes on during the event. Communicating that among senior leadership, everybody has to be on the same page. There's the expression consensus. You don't need consensus. Not every person has to agree 100% with everything that you're deciding. But you damn well better have buy-in. True. So you can live without consensus, but everybody who's involved with making decisions has to have buy-in to what the group has decided they're going to do.
Yeah.
And if you have that buy-in, then nobody has any excuse of why they didn't pull their part of the rope. So I would say communication up front as much as possible, using serious terms like liability to get everybody's attention, and making sure that by the end of this discussion or follow-up discussions, you achieve that buy-in so everybody's on the same page.
And I also think, because it's not just talking about the alcohol consumption, it's talking about the consequences of overindulgence, right? Like, I didn't eat lunch that day at the trade show. I've been up since 6 o'clock. I weigh 110 pounds. I had 3 glasses of wine, and all of a sudden I'm tipsy. I can't function as well. It becomes a safety concern for me. So like as part of your duty of care conversation, like what does that look like if that person becomes vulnerable because she crossed, and it's typically a she, like we cross over quicker because of the body weight issues, right? Like how do we help protect those vulnerable people who have overindulged in sexual harassment outcomes? Because liability sometimes focuses just on alcohol consumption. We don't necessarily think about the safety issues of, if I'm running an event in Vegas, what happens if I let an attendee walk back out onto the strip? Where's my duty of care there? That's not just alcohol consumption. It's a result of her alcohol consumption. And what does that look like in a 80% male field, and I have these women who are there and who just aren't thinking about it, or another vulnerable personality? And I think that that's interesting because I've never seen a duty of care policy or sat in on a planning meeting when you think about it from a liability perspective and had that conversation around the consequences of sexual harassment as a result of alcohol.
As an owner of multiple liquor licenses and as an organization that serves alcohol at events all over the state of Arizona and has served in other parts of the country, we have to understand where our liability ends and what we have control over. Our liability results, or I should say, if something bad happens after service, that could encompass a wide variety of issues. That could be a drunk driving incident. That could be a pedestrian incident. That could be a violent incident. Any sort of, personal or sexual violence that occurs. If over-service is part of the cause of that, then we have to accept liability if we can show that there's direct causality. Basically the proximity of the incident, and not just in distance, but in time. I think everybody in the industry just needs to understand the liability is regardless of the actual outcome, the actual, what called a crime or called an incident, whatever has occurred after that, it doesn't matter, in the sense that we're liable because we have to, or we have the potential to be liable for it because we have got to take care of the consumer, the guest at the event, the attendee. We have to make sure that we're doing our part to protect them from themselves, from other people, from over service. And as long as we're doing that, then we've done what we can do. Right. Beyond that, you're talking now a security issue. You're talking now, how do you have monitors in the event that are keeping an eye on things, that are separate from that organization, separate from your organization? Or if you're an organization that maintains a security force, I have corporate clients that have their own private security that they use for events. It's their responsibility. We all, the old expression, see something, say something. Of course, if we see something inappropriate going down, or we see something that could potentially be an uncomfortable situation, we need, and again, this is communication prior to the event, and this is organization prior to the event. We need to know, who do we contact? Who do we reach out to if one of my team members sees something that they're uncomfortable with or that they think could develop into a problem? And as long as we have that information, then, and we have done our part with, say, the old pre-shift, getting our team together before the event starts, and we've communicated that information effectively, then it works. The best thing that we can tell people on our team is, all right, we've designated these 2 or 3 people, these 2 or 3 supervisors or managers on our team. You as the line employee, you as the bartender or the server, this is who you will seek out should you feel that there's an issue. That person then goes to the next level person, which could be it could be the person who's dealing directly with the client. It could be that these 1, 2, or 3 people have direct access to the client's designated person. That information is communicated there as quickly as possible. And now that entity is responsible for taking the measures necessary to protect or prevent something from happening. Again, it just comes down to having a plan, communicating the plan effectively, following through on the plan effectively, and then making sure that there's follow-up after the fact to ensure that if things need to change for next time, we know what to do.
Yeah, it's like your crisis communications planning, Alex. This is something where it's one more thing. And when you and I were talking about it previously in the episode, this wasn't one of the topics that I think we we went on, right? But I do believe that it is one, when you were thinking about the sticky note conversation of what could go awry, you know, that's a valuable sticky note to have, and thinking about some of those different iterations of safety due to consumption or just safety in general.
Well, and I think it's one of those ones that you prepare for in a way that it's probably likely to happen. There's some stuff you can do to mitigate it, but the likeliness of it to happen, whereas the consequence can vary, right? So it's not really the someone getting intoxicated, it's what happens next, right? And that's the concern. And that's where communications and crisis comes into play. I mean, you can mitigate that crisis and it doesn't become a crisis because you recognize it, you get that person home and you see them the next day and everything's fine. So I think that's part of the issue, is that we think about the alcohol consumption, not what happens next.
Well, and there are lots of things that you can do as the event organizer, as the producer, as the caterer, that help mitigate at the end of the night, so to speak. You know, and are they going to mitigate circumstances for everything? No, it's going to mitigate things like drunk driving and, well, let's just call it drunk walking. I don't know. Stumbling out of a party into traffic.
Like giving them an Uber code to get from one place to another, so that they're not trying to make poor choices on a scooter.
You know,
true story, y'all. True story.
Yeah. People make great decisions with those scooters, let me tell you. So, but that's a great idea. You know, obviously the Lyft codes, the Uber codes, you know, there are local cab companies that you can organize to have a cab line out front. Anything like that helps. Closing down the bar before the party ends.
Yes.
You know, if the party's scheduled to go till 11 o'clock, guess what? Close the bar at 10:30. You know, it'll slow things down toward the end of the night. Don't tell anybody. The bar just closes at 10:30. Party still goes. Finish your drinks, and then you're out. You know, have late night food. I know it's, you know, it helps soak up some of the alcohol that's in the belly. That's not going to make you any less drunk over time, but it might slow down how fast you absorb that alcohol.
I'm a huge like, that is actually one of my soapboxes. Brant and Alex laugh at me all the time, but like, we go to all these parties and there's copious amounts of alcohol and no food. Like, especially once you get into some of the later parties, which is where the really heavy drinking for a lot of people starts. And they've maybe had dinner, but because they've been to 3 or 4 different things, or they were at a sponsor event, like they didn't eat the way they normally would. And so like, I'm always like, I always do Uber Eats. And if there's not room service or something, I'm starving at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so say that one once again for the people at home. Have food at your events.
Have food at events. And as a caterer, I highly endorse it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, Lindsay, you brought up a good point that we haven't really talked about. A lot of conferences and events will have a ton of stuff going on at night that are sponsored open bar events, and people will party hop from one to the next to the next. So in terms of liability, like that's a minefield in and of itself, is who ends up being liable.
Whoever has the crappiest lawyer.
Right.
Again,
when you've attended 5 events. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's something that we as an industry need to accept. It's something that we as an industry need to be better about every day. And I don't think we do a bad job of it. I think that through continued education, through continued reinforcement, and through this ever-growing cultural shift, you'll see things evolve. And you'll see the attendee experience change into something that is less alcohol fueled in some cases. You know, little tip and trick when it comes to your bars and your layout at an event, throw in some non-alcoholic bars that just have mocktails. Again, signage is key, direction is key. But guess what? If there's 40 people in line at a bar, which, believe me, that makes my eye twitch to think of 40 people standing in line. But if you have an event of 4,000 people, having 40 people in a line, the line's going to move relatively quickly. That's okay. But there's going to be some people standing in that line that are going to give up, and they'll go to another bar. And guess what? If it's a delicious mocktail, they're like, okay, I'll try it. Well, that just slowed down their drinking a little bit. So you can be strategic. You know, people say, I hate lines at bars. Sometimes lines at bars are an okay thing. I've never been a big fan of separating spirits from like a beer and wine bar, but again, it's ways that you can slow it down. That does create the potential for a negative guest experience and negative feedback on the event. But if your primary focus here is minimizing your liability and maximizing the overall guest experience, it helps.
Yeah.
So it's the flow of the event, the speed of service, all of these things matter in how alcohol is not only served but consumed and the rate at which it's done. So anything along those lines can help you mitigate some of those circumstances.
All right, well, we've got 5 minutes left and we have 4 questions because there've been so much good stuff here. So what's the one question we should have asked you but didn't on this topic?
What's my favorite thing to drink?
Oh, what is your favorite thing to drink?
Bourbon.
Bourbon.
Yes, but
Like-
never in copious amounts in public ever, because that would be bad for the events industry. No, what's the one thing that you should have asked? I don't know. You've asked a lot of really good questions. I'll tell you the question that I wasn't prepared for, in that I didn't expect, I should say, was the liability that would be related to interpersonal, I guess, violence or interpersonal sexual harassment. I guess I hadn't expected that question. So you've got me thinking, and now I'm going to leave this whole conversation with research to do on my own, because that's pretty damn important.
It's a big concern of my clients. We do a lot of incentive and corporate events, and like that's always one because of the industries. There are women there, but the men more than all outnumber, and like some things that can be taken historically as just accepted behavior, it's not anymore. And it's, for a long time, speaking as a woman, it was never okay. But when I say it's not okay now, or that woman at the party goes, this is not all right, the leadership is starting to hear that. And so it's, we've seen just 4 events in the last 6 months, sexual harassment claims come into the HR department coming off of a corporate event. Like one was a sales conference they were running and something else. So it's a growing movement. And then the Association for Women in Events, they've got a pledge that's going out that's directly related. There's a whole space around alcohol and safety. And as event professionals, what is our duty of care? But as women in the events industry, where we go to events, because the events industry, actual events like Cater Source, MPI, like all of these, they do a great job, all of the industry events, at helping us take care of one another. But like Alex was talking about, it's the culture of alcohol. It's still there. It's still very prevalent. And the responsibility to one another isn't always as top of mind as it could be, because a lot of historical precedences still remain around that.
It's true.
Step back off my soapbox.
So if you could only pick one, what is the one tip you have for event planners?
I think it's a tip that applies to everything that we do, and that is communicate early, communicate thoroughly, and communicate effectively. It's, if you are doing that, you are 50% there. As long as you understand what everybody's role is, you understand what your role is and your responsibility, you're going to have a successful event. So communicate effectively and early.
Awesome.
How about any cool resources?
Oh, no.
Whoa.
Oh, no, it's fine. We were asking the same question.
Stepping on each other. Well-oiled machine you got going on here.
If I ask the question, I don't have to close this, right? So I'm definitely going to ask the question. You can remember all the things at the end. Okay. What are resources? Because you've given us the DRAM laws. You've talked a lot about things that resources they get. Are there checklists planners can do, or just any great and new resources, websites, blogs, books that you like to read, gadgets that have absolutely nothing to do with safety and alcohol?
That have absolutely nothing to do with safety and alcohol. Wow, we're going off topic here. My resources industry-wide are, well, you're actually at one of them today, and that's BizBash. There's a lot of great information, a lot of great suggestions and ideas that flow through BizBash. All of the industry events that we have the pleasure of either speaking at or participating in, ILEA, NACE, the special event and Cater Source, which are combining this year, which is going to be really interesting. I do encourage people to get to those and take the boring classes. You know, I know everybody wants, oh, what's hot, what's trendy, and then blah, blah, blah. You want all of that, but guess what? You need some basic information too. So the topic may sound super dry, and quite frankly, it might be, but hopefully you get a presenter who can make it interesting and engaging. So take the boring classes. But as far as going back on topic and resources for what we're talking about today, online, like I said, Google searching if you have questions about laws in particular states. Tips actually has their website, which I wrote down, and it is gettips.com. Gettips.com, gettips.com. They'll be able to help you in all 50 states find out any information you need about liquor laws in terms of ideas for mocktails. I mentioned Seedlip by name. It just happens to be the product I like. I'm not endorsing them. I am not paid endorsement or anything like that. I just happen to like Seedlip. So I think it's Seedlip Drinks. It is, Seedlip, SEEDLIP drinks.com. Check them out. Find your local. They're actually distributed through wholesalers, through liquor distributors around the country. It's not something you're going to see in stores right now. And then, the other resources would be anything that gives you an idea, a concept. For event designers, I find inspiration can come from architecture, inspiration can come to entire thing. So you're going to find inspiration in the strangest places. If you do, write it down as fast as possible, snap a photo of as fast as possible, and come back to it later. And share it with somebody else so that you can spin these ideas out together. In terms of books, read what interests you. I'll be very honest, I used to rag compulsively on self-help stuff. I just thought it was silly and nonsensical, and if you couldn't figure it out for yourself, well, I'm starting to turn the corner on that. So if you guys have any ideas for some great authors, I would love to hear them, because I'm finding that there are ways to constantly learn and grow that, guess what, you can't always do it yourself. You do need somebody outside kind of looking in and giving you a little bit of guidance and a little bit of inspiration. I know my organization has been working with Darren Hardy and his team to, go through the insane productivity and the high performance forum that he created. So that's helping us a lot. Bringing in a cultural consultant, somebody who can actually look at your organization, interview key leaders, interview based on the goals that you have set, what your company needs to do to evolve. So professionals like that are out there. Find one. If you find your organization is struggling, find somebody that can come in and help you figure out why.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Michael. For anyone who is looking to get a hold of you or follow you or give you a book recommendation, where can they find you?
They can find me in a bar in Phoenix, interviewing
Online.
bartenders.
Where can they find you online?
Online, they can find me via email at stavros@mculinary.com. You can check out mculinary.com, our website, and also submit an inquiry that way. My social media, I actually use our company social media, so at mculinaryaz, and in fact, mculinaryaz is across the board. Our Twitter handle, our Instagram, our Pinterest, and our Facebook page are all at mculinaryaz. I have a personal LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I call it Facebook for Dorks, and it's actually something that's growing in importance, and I'm kind of digging on LinkedIn right now, which makes me an even bigger dork. So those are some of the places that you can find me, and I will do my best to give you something resembling an intelligent response.
Great. Thank you so much again. And thank you, Lindsay, for co-hosting today with me. As you all know, or if you don't, if you're new, we record live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern at www.event-icons.com. Episodes are available the following Tuesday on all your favorite podcast apps. But the best place to watch is live at event-icons.com. There you can see show notes, links to all the resources shared, and join the chat right there on the page. Again, we want to know what you think, so let us know if you have any topics you want to discuss or any guests that you want to see on the show. Let us know. Contact us on social media or through our website. And that's it for today. And this was an amazing conversation. I think that it is important. I think we need to be having these conversations. So thank you once again for being on the show. And we will see you next week here at Event Icons.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #Event Icons. To catch all the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway. Just tag your post with #Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #Event Icons.